Can I please have Sergeant Ian Glick to the stage, please? Ian is a friend of Dr. Freyou and his husband Dwight, and will be sharing Simon's story.
Good afternoon. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Scott for coordinating this. This is my 16th year, I believe, working with Scott in different events during Police Week. I've had the honor of helping to coordinate some of these events from when they were much smaller and have grown to this size. That's been an honor of mine. As I've been winding down my career, Scott reached out to me and asked me if I would do a celebration of life reading for Dwight, for his husband, Simon. That changed this event to me from being an honor to being a privilege. I've been kind of on the side watching and helping Scott do this sporadically through the years, and to actually be here honoring someone and memorializing someone's life is indeed a privilege. I'm humbled to be here with all the other survivors who are here, and I appreciate your attendance. This is a very brief look at the great life of Second Lieutenant and Dr. Simon Joseph Freyou of Baltimore, Maryland. Those who knew him know that he had three passions in life: being a loving husband of 38 years to his partner and husband, Dwight, being a caring and compassionate nursing provider and mentor, and spending time in his spiritual place, which was his beloved garden. Simon had an encyclopedic knowledge when he came to plants. Some would say that he never met a plant that he didn't like. Dwight, on the other hand, not so much. He's a concrete and astroturf kind of guy. Dwight jokes that he has been left with a yard in Baltimore, Maryland, filled with banana plants, palm trees, native Maryland plants, and 22 types of bamboo. Dwight, I'll remind you, those are all part of Simon. There's also his library of hundreds of plant books. But plants are not the only things that were in Simon Freyou's garden. Wherever he went, he planted love and caring. He was known for his kindness, his gentle nature, and support of diversity. He was truly loved by everyone, including family, friends, professional colleagues, and patients. Simon was born September 5th, 1965 in New Orleans, Louisiana. In addition to Dwight, he is survived by his parents, 3 sisters, and 1 brother, all who live in Louisiana. Simon was a lifelong learner. He graduated from Catholic High School in New Iberia, Louisiana, went on to graduate from the University of Southwestern Louisiana School of Nursing, the Johns Hopkins University School of Nursing, the University of Maryland School of Nursing, and Wilkes University Passan School of Nursing, resulting in multiple advanced degrees. And I would probably say a lot of paper cuts too. Over his career, Simon worked at several major medical institutions in the Baltimore area, including the Johns Hopkins Hospital, Greater Baltimore Medical Center, Holy Cross Health, and MedStar Union Memorial Hospital. At the time of his death, at the age of 57, from multiple myeloma, he was in private practice as a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, where he worked with his husband Dwight, a former paramedic and now trauma therapist specializing in caring for first responders and military personnel with PTSD. When Simon's clients learned of his death, Dwight and his family were overwhelmed with an outpouring of love from his patients. Here are a few comments from some of them. He was truly wonderful, such a special person, and I feel incredibly lucky to have been his patient. He was a prime example of how having a caring and competent doctor makes a huge difference. Another patient says, I've been working with Simon for roughly 2 years, and he was really a great guy. Always kind and encouraging. You could always tell we weren't just a patient, but he genuinely cared about how we were coming along, and that's rarer than you may realize these days. I attribute him greatly to much of my recovery, even though each time I told him that, he made sure to put the kudos right back to me. Simon was a caring man, a kind man, and a professional too. I will always appreciate the time he took for me and his sincerity for his commitment to helping others find peace and comfort in their lives. Yet another patient relates, Simon was such an amazing spirit and someone who I feel blessed to have met. He certainly played a part in saving my quality of life and the quality of life for my family. And finally, he was definitely a huge part of the sunshine in my life. And that's just what his patients had to say. Simon and Dwight were also world travelers, having adventured to 48 countries, including Kenya, Vietnam, Cambodia, and the Galapagos Islands. In fact, it was on a cruise to Alaska where I first met Simon and Dwight. Simon immediately struck me as being very laid back, a very laid back person that enjoyed life. He was very comfortable around everyone he met, and he always made sure they were comfortable too. His love of nature was evident as he watched the beauty of Alaska go past us from the deck of the ship. You could see it in his eyes that he truly embraced nature and was truly at home when surrounded by it. But beyond being a wonderful person, Simon had a funny and often naughty side to him. Since his death in October, there have been a lot of stories coming out about Simon, such as being in Havana, Cuba, and having a prostitute trying to pick him up at a beer hall. Simon, being the sweet and naive person that he was, thought that she was just a very nice woman who wanted to talk, so he bought her a beer. They parted company independently of each other, just for the record. There are so many little things about Simon which made people laugh. There was a patient when he worked at Johns Hopkins who used to call him Nurse Honeybuns. Another case of his naivete and devotion to his country was when he was in the Army. His National Guard unit was a medical unit, and he was a fairly new second lieutenant with a big assignment when on deployment to the Mojave Desert. He, as a young gay man, long before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and was given the assignment of being in charge of shower duty. Never happened to me when I was in the Army. But Simon, being Simon, gave the assignment to someone else and often stated that that was one of his biggest mistakes while in the Army. Joni, his neighbor and dear friend, shared a story of Simon, who at times could be a bit unfocused. Joni shared of one evening when he was sitting in his chair, was trying to put on his bedroom slippers, only to find out that he was instead trying to stick his big foot into Misty, his cat, who was lying on the floor at his feet. But Simon had an angel and a devil side to him, like one sitting on each shoulder. He was such a kind and loving person, but he was also such a little stinker. He would occasionally tell little white lies if he was up to something that he thought Dwight wouldn't support. Everybody here who's married understands that. He would buy antique Roseville pottery with cash and then hide it around the house so Dwight wouldn't find it. After his death, Dwight found 32 pieces of antique pottery hidden on top of the kitchen cabinets. And his mother shared several stories with Dwight when he was in the hospital about Simon and his brother Patrick. Apparently, they weren't angels either. In fact, Miss Linda, his mother, had a hard time finding and keeping babysitters for them. One story goes that when they were about 5 or so, the babysitter asked them, "Where's your dog?" They said, "Oh, he's in the freezer." Thinking nothing, she just moved on. About 20 minutes later, once again, she asked the same question, "Where's the dog?" and got the same response. Well, sure enough, she opened the door to the freezer, and there sat the poor shivering dog in the cold, dark freezer. Even as Simon's life was nearing its end, he managed to plant one last seed in his garden of life. It was his wish that in lieu of flowers, that donations should be made to the Simon J. Freyou Oncology Foundation Fund at Ascension St. Agnes Hospital. This fund was created in honor of Simon's unwavering support of oncology nurses and his desire to ensure these individuals have the opportunity to become their very best selves. This fund will provide support for various continuing education programs. In closing, Dwight has said that Simon was a shining star in our universe, and the world is a bit darker today without him. I think everybody in this room understands that, and it's by sharing these stories that we see that, in fact, it's not darker. It's, in fact, illuminated even more. Thank you.
I've had the pleasure of knowing Dwight and Simon for over 24 years, and everything that Ian just said is true. Simon was amazing.